I'm Barbara Bailey, the Master Gardener Coordinator at VCE Loudon, and I am for the soil because soil is the foundation of life, both above and below ground.
It is my pleasure to welcome you to another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee. Eric and Mary are taking the week off. No, they're not. They're hardworking as always. Okay, I got to share this story with you. We record a lot of interviews for our associated radio programs over at onthefarmradio.com. A lot of conversations, a lot of interviews with farmers, and I recently had the opportunity to talk with Susan Watkins in Dinwiddie County, Virginia, who farms around 3,500 acres with her son. And at the end of that interview, I thought this is so appropriate for the podcast, For the Soil, a Conversation. So that's exactly what we're doing. Eric and Mary are not taking the week off. They're working as hard as they always do. And thank you, Eric and Mary, for everything that you do. Hope you enjoy this week's podcast. It is my pleasure to welcome to the program today Susan Watkins. She is with Watkins Farms in Dinwiddie County, Virginia. Susan and her family produce around 3,500 acres of soybeans, corn, and wheat. And Susan, it is a real pleasure. I know this is a busy time of the year for you, but it's a real pleasure. And thank you for taking the time to be on our program.
Thank you, Jeff, for the opportunity.
4 different areas I'd like to talk with you about, Susan, and that is soil health. I want to talk about how your farm has implemented cover crops. Of course, I want to talk about what you do with the United Soybean Board. But first of all, my understanding is that your farm, your family farm, has a very interesting and a very long history. Tell us about that.
Yes, Jeff. Unfortunately, my husband passed away back in June of 24, but now my son and I are here on the farm, and he is the 8th generation. And I'm so proud of that because the Watkins family received the land that we're on in a land grant back in the 1700s. So we are very proud of, my husband's accomplishments, and look forward to seeing my son carry on this tradition.
Have soybeans always been a part of your crop rotation, at least in your generation?
Yes, soybeans have always been around. Now, we have diversified throughout the years. We used to raise pumpkins, sheep, cotton, tobacco, but, we have to scale back to the soybean, corn, and wheat rotation.
Sounds like a very interesting operation there in Dinwiddie County, Virginia. Again, I know this is a very busy time of the year, and I want to thank you for taking the time. You're also very active with the United Soybean Board. Tell me about your activities in that regard.
Yeah, I'm honored to represent Virginia on the United Soybean Board, and this year I'm serving as secretary as well as demand chair. For the board. The board consists of 77 board members, and created throughout 31 states. And we represent over 500,000 soybean farmers in the United States.
Now, you mentioned that you're chair of the Demand Action Team, I believe you described it as. Tell us what goes on there.
Demand Action Team. Right now, as the way things are going, we need demand as much as possible at this time to, as we say, push that pile. Demand consists of 3 working groups. One of those working groups is health and nutrition, and that covers animal and human consumption. Another one is innovation and technology, and that's new products made from soy. There's over 1,000 soy-based products on the market today. And new to our work group this year is exports. So we have USEC, and that's the United States Soybean Export Council. And they represent us in over 80 different countries. And, our exports account for about 60% of our soybean production here in the United States. So that is a great importance that we keep funding that organization to create that demand and keep growing other than just the 80 countries we're in at this time.
I know there's a lot of activities that go on with the United Soybean Board as soybeans have really become a global crop. I can remember, well, I guess my dad could remember when soybeans were kind of considered a novelty crop back in the 1940s and 50s, but they have come on strong in our generation, and it is now one of the leading crops in the world. Am I right?
Yes. I always say that soybeans is like the perfect protein package. Includes the protein, amino acids, energy, vitamins, minerals that are crucial to poultry, swine, and aquaculture diets. And in other countries where they have issues with malnourishment, with young children or maybe elderly, it's a wonderful supplement that they put into their food supply.
We're talking today with Susan Watkins of Watkins Farms in Dinwiddie County, Virginia. And Susan, I want to turn the conversation now to soil health and cover crops. How big of a priority is soil health on your farm?
Oh, it's number one. That soil is our livelihood, and we do everything we can to protect it. So we say we were doing sustainable practice before it was cool, before even any payments were out there for incentives. We were doing, cover crops, no-till, and we continue to do it on 100% of our acreage at this time. We want to keep our fields healthy and growing year-round. We do not want anything to be dormant. We want it to be green and prospering year-round.
Tell me about that transition to no-till. That was a big transition for a lot of farmers. It was this isn't the way that my daddy did it. This isn't the way that my granddaddy did it. And what are you talking about with this no-till? It was a big transition, was it not?
It was a transition. In some crops, you still have to do some tilling, especially sometimes with tobacco. But we used to do strip till tobacco. We used to do strip till cotton that was still minimal impact on the soils. But once you make that adjustment, it's actually saving you in the long run. You do buy your equipment, but once that's in place, you have less passes across the field, which is, less diesel, less inputs all the way around. So it's been very beneficial for us. And here in Virginia, we have to be conscious of our conservation efforts, as we are located within the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and we do not want to do anything to jeopardize the environment of ourselves or others.
A lot of farmers, and where I'm located is also I'm in Augusta County in the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, and a lot of farmers over the years, when you talk about the Chesapeake Bay watershed, it has not always been a friendly discussion, if you know what I mean. But overall, farmers have made a big difference in the cleanliness of the waters of the bay.
Oh yeah, with our no-till cover crop practices, we're building our organic matter, where we have that better water retention, weed suppression. And again, it's just protecting, our water systems, for ourselves and our community, as well as, down the river and on into the bay and the Atlantic. And, we just, with our practices also, that it reduces that runoff. So we're doing everything we can to farm in a healthy, sustainable manner.
Tell me about your cover crop program and describe it as if you were talking with fellow farmers.
We actually started our cover crop a little bit early. We started doing that several years ago, and we have a high clearance spreader. And while the beans are still in the field, we actually go over and start spreading our rye cover crop within the beans. And as the leaves start dropping, that's our coverage there. And we get really good coverage from that way of seeding. And It's beneficial, too, that we're not doing it at the end of the season. It kind of gives us a little bit of head start when we're not so pushed crunch time before we start harvesting. It gives us a little window that we can go out there and get it done in a more efficient manner.
That's a fairly new practice, or at least new to me. I just learned about it a couple of years ago, that farmers are sowing their cover crops even while the cash crop, so to speak, is still in the field.
Yes, it's been very beneficial, and again, the way that the leaves fall naturally, sometimes by the time we harvest our beans, we've already got a really nice green field footprint at that time.
I listened to one of the podcasts that you did several months ago, and one of the things that really caught my ear, and we're talking again with Susan Watkins of Watkins Farms in Dinwiddie County. She and her family produce around 3,500 acres of various crops, including soybeans, corn, wheat, and so forth. But you used a word that you called it a big buzzword, biologicals. And you said it was foliar applied. A lot of farmers might not be familiar with how are you using biologicals that are foliar applied?
We have used some biologicals. We're still, there's a lot of research that needs to be made in biologicals. They have hit the market so hot and heavy, and there's so many to choose from, and you really have to be cautious. But we have found a few that has been beneficial to us. And at that time, we go into the different stages of what we feel is most beneficial to the plant, when they need it at that time. And it has paid off in a few areas. Sometimes I say all we need is some good sun and some good rain. And sometimes it makes no difference what you put on the crop. If you go into a drought year, nothing's going to help. It's just that's farming.
Well, speaking of drought, I know here in the Shenandoah Valley, we had 2 consecutive years in 2023, 2024 of very severe drought conditions. What have the last couple of years been like in Dinwiddie County?
Last year we did experience a hot, dry spell like we always do in that June, July time frame. It did cut our corn probably by about 30-40% on our yields. But as far as our soybeans, our yields were the best we ever had in soybeans. And that says a lot for the technology that's come into our seed system now. And a lot of that is accredited to the United Soybean Board. And these checkoff funds that goes into research and helps with abiotic stress, not only in Virginia, but, across the other soybean producing states.
Well, I want to commend the Soybean Board for their website. And for our listeners, you can find that website at unitedsoybean.org. That is unitedsoybean.org. A lot of resources there. One of the features that I saw was on how to build healthy, productive, and sustainable soils. There's just a lot of good information there at unitedsoybean.org. What are your dreams for the future, Susan, with the farm?
To see my son prosper and, have the opportunity and prosper as my husband and I had the opportunity. And would love to see my grandchildren grow up and have that same passion and love for the farm that my son has.
Now, your farm, it came into the family. Do you know exactly what year it was? So you said it was deeded by the King of England.
From what I've seen, I believe it was back in the 1750s.
So it's older than the country.
Yeah, it's pretty old. And that's one thing I do tell people across the I-states. We've been farming in Virginia before the colonists settled. But we are still a productive and should be recognized part of, the growing of soybeans and other crops. Virginia has got people, it's got ports. We're in a wonderful location, and there's a lot of opportunities for Virginia. And that's one thing I'm trying to fight for, on the United Soybean Board, is to recognize Virginia and the importance it could play in the economy, moving our industry, whether it be domestic or internationally.
Got about 2 minutes left, and we're talking today with Susan Watkins of Watkins Farms in Dinwiddie County, Virginia. And Susan, I wanted to ask you about a trend that I continue to read about. I haven't seen it really in place on farms yet, although I'm sure it is, and that's the use of artificial intelligence and also autonomous farm machinery. How could this impact the soybean industry with AI and autonomous tractors?
It is. The technology is being developed every day. There is a cost to that technology, of course. And right now, John Deere has the See and Spray, and you have to pay for that service. But that is something that they say there will be a return on that investment because you'll be saving so much in some of your input costs. But it also takes a lot of money to get into this market and start using some of these technologies. But I do see a lot of this coming to fruition. Not sure it's going to be, within a couple of years, but I think it will be there for the farmers, and they'll have the option and the choice whether or not they would like to use it.
Yeah, very well said. It's this technology in agriculture is always changing. I'm sure it was a big change when they shifted from horsepower to tractor power, and now we're talking about artificial intelligence and drones and autonomous machinery. So technology is always changing, as well as the genetics in the seeds that we plant in the ground. But unfortunately, our time is up. And Susan, I want to thank you for everything you do for Virginia agriculture and also for the United Soybean Board. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having the opportunity to talk with you this morning.
Susan Watkins with Watkins Farms. For the Soil, a conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. If you should have a specific question about soil health, call your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or a Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of The Flip Charts, all rights reserved. For the Soil, a conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee.